at the Clef Crust C920, a PCIe 4 SSD, and more importantly, Clef's first PCIe 4 SSD. So this features the Phison E18 controller as well as some very fancy Micron's 176 layer 3D NAND. We'll be getting into it and let's see whether it's any good. So let's go! Let's start with the unboxing. So on the front here, you can see that it has a darker finish compared to the Clef C720, and also that the drive is actually black. You can see the chrome Clef logo as well as the teal branding for the Crest C920 so that you know what you're getting. And there's also a sticker up here that tells you that you're getting the 2TB version, so you don't have to flip the box over to see what's on the back. So along the front here also you get information like the NVMe 1.4 support, SLC caching, 3D NAND obviously, and also backup software included, as well as the 5-year limited warranty. Now, flipping it over to the back, you can see that there is some information, additional information about like NVMe, LDPC support, and also the fact that there's SRAM, but yeah, some sparse information as well as the speed claims. So this drive only comes in 1TB and 2TB capacities, and the 2TB version we have here goes up to 7000 MB per second read and 6850 MB per second write, which is really damn fast, and yeah, definitely the fastest drive we have tested yet. On the inside, you get this plastic tray which holds the drive pretty solidly, tightly, and yeah, you probably won't have the drive swinging around unless someone decides to play rugby with your puzzle. So yeah, I digress. And the drive, as I mentioned, is held on quite tightly. And this is the drive itself. So this is a two-sided PCB. So you get NAND and memory on both sides of the PCB. On the front, you get the controller, which is the Phison E18 controller, is somewhere underneath here. So let's go over some of the specifications of the Clef Crust C920. So we got here the 2TB version, which gives you 1.91 TB of usable space. It supports the PCIe 4x4 interface, and also comes with 256GB Micron 176 layer 3D TLC NAND packages, which is why you have 8 packages on this 2TB drive. Along with that, you get 2GB of DDR4 memory, and they're actually the SK Hynix CJR DDR4 memory, which actually featured on quite a few memory modules that can be overclocked quite high as well. But obviously you won't be overclocking the memory on your SSD. So the rated speeds, as I mentioned earlier, is going up to 7000 MB per second read and 6850 MB per second write, and the endurance is rated for 1400 TB written, which is gonna take you literal ages for you to finish. And the dimensions are pretty standard for the M.2 2280 form factor, which means it's 80mm long and it should fit in most laptops and also desktop motherboards. And it weighs just 8 grams, so you shouldn't add too much weight to your laptop. And as mentioned earlier, it comes with free copy of Acronis True Image HD, which will help you clone your laptop or your desktop drive over to the Clef Crust C920. And yes, it comes with a 5-year warranty, so you get additional peace of mind. So yeah, the test system used is the Intel Core i5-11600K, which does support PCIe 4 SSDs as long as you connect it to the first slot on the motherboard. And yeah, that's about it that's important about the test system. Let's get into the performance. So as we mentioned earlier, the Clef Crust C920 is claimed to be the fastest SSD we have tested, and it actually does deliver. So in Crystal Disk Mark, we see it deliver to 7066 MB per second read and 6976 MB per second write. So that's actually faster than what they claimed. So they claim 7000 and 6850 for read and write respectively. But yeah, we're getting slightly above that, which is nice to see. With the Phison E18 controller and the latest 3D NAND from Micron, it seems that Clef has made a very fast SSD here. So moving on to ASSSD, which is a slightly more stringent test, we see write and read speeds taken down a notch. So when in ASSSD, we see that the read speeds are 5935 MB per second and write is at 6046 MB per second. That's still really fast, and of course obviously with so much speed, the 4K speeds are also really high, but not exactly that much faster than compared to your normal PCIe 3 SSD. Unless of course when you consider the heavily threaded 4K tests, which does take a bit more advantage of the PCIe 4 bandwidth. And in Anvil storage utility, the results we got in ASSSD are supported, with sequential speeds are well over 5400 MB per second in both read and write. And last but not least, we also took a look at the drive in IDA64 linear write test, which we can see that there's about 33% of the drive being used as the SLC cache. So how you can see this is that it maintains the high write speeds all the way until about the 33% mark before it starts to drop off, whereby it goes back to around, it jumps at around 1000 something, 2500, which is still very fast, but yeah, not nearly as fast as the initial 5881 speeds that it maintained for 33% of the drive. And as we have expected, given the most modern PCIe 4 controller we have, the Clefcraft C920 actually runs significantly cooler than most PCIe 4 drives we have tested. It even runs cooler than certain PCIe 3 drives. Even without a heatsink, we saw temperatures of only around 60 degrees Celsius when we absolutely hammered it with writes. And once we slapped on a heatsink, it gone down to 52 Celsius, which is very cool actually compared to, some hotter PCIe 3 SSDs that we have tested in the past. So we also tested it for the real-world gaming performance, and we found that it delivers absolutely stunning performance, loading Final Fantasy 14 Stormblood in just 9.76 seconds. So compared to the next fastest drive, it's about 1 whole second faster. So if you want to get the added advantage of fast loading speeds to get into the game faster, this is definitely the drive to get. Yeah, so I think at this point we have established that the Clefcraft C920 is a very fast and consistent drive, and it also runs cooler than most PCIe and PCIe 4 SSDs we have seen in the past, so that's a pretty nice surprise. Considering that how the first gen of PCIe 4 SSDs usually overheated to the point that they needed a heatsink to operate normally, this is a welcome change. And now let's go on to the pricing, which is RM1709 for this drive. So we are talking about 2TB drive, so the price is definitely on the higher side, but if you consider all things including its speed and its coolness, I think the price is pretty well justified. So I think by now we have established that the Clefcraft C920 is a very fast and consistent drive. It even runs cooler than many PCIe 4 and PCIe 3 SSDs we have checked out in the past, so that's definitely a welcome change. Considering especially that the first gen of PCIe 4 SSDs overheated to a point that you needed a heatsink to run it normally, this without a heatsink you can still use this, and I think that's a pretty nice change coming from the past. So the pricing of RM1000. Hello everyone, to episode 130 of PokdeLIVE. So if earlier you were looking at the caption saying, the title saying there's episode 129, that's because I sort of miscalculated and we had 228 episodes, because yeah, one episode is actually on Facebook, on YouTube. So yeah, so today we'll be taking a look at the Mac Z690 Tomahawk Wi-Fi, which we have already done an overview of on Pokde. If you want to read about it, you can. Or you can just stay tuned and we'll be going over it in today's video. And I actually have a camera set up here so that you guys can have a closer look at the motherboard, because obviously I don't think you can actually see any components if I just use the main camera. So yeah, I think we should start with announcing the giveaway winner first, because yeah, I always forget to do that and I always announce it at the end of the stream, which is not really helpful, but yeah. Ta-da! Boom. So congratulations Sufyan Abdul Rahman for winning the giveaway last week, and yeah, as usual, if you want to win the giveaway this week, all you have to do is to leave a comment, and we will pick one lucky winner from the comments every week and we announce it next week. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Anyway, yep, let's get to the news. So I think one of the more interesting news this week, there aren't that many news. I think the news actually slowing down this week. So yeah, one of them is the best smartphones in November according to Antutu, and obviously the best ones are always the gaming phones, because yeah, they have the best cooling and performance profile, because yeah, when it comes to smartphone performance, not only you have to provide the cooling, you also have to create the performance profile to extract the most out of the chipset. So apparently the best one on Antutu's benchmark chart right now is the Black Shark 4S Pro, and followed by the Red Magic, yeah, sorry, I can't read Chinese that well. Red Magic 6S Pro, and also the third one is iQOO's 8 Pro. And after that we have surprisingly, the Black Shark 4 Pro, which is using the Snapdragon 888, which actually puts it ahead of the Vivo X70 Pro Plus and the ROG Phone 5S, both of which are Snapdragon 888 Plus devices. So that's quite an interesting change. Saifuddin Rahman, hello PokdeTeam, hello. Not the best price. Yeah, obviously, well, when it comes to gaming phones, you have to, pay more for that kind of performance because, nothing's for free in the world, right? And yeah. So, yeah, these are all the Android phones. And one thing to remind everyone is that, when you see Android's Antutu score, you cannot directly compare to an iPhone's Antutu score because they are based on different APIs. So for Android, the GPU benchmark runs on Vulkan, while for iPhones, it runs on Metal. So yeah, it's actually different APIs, and the performance scores are not directly relatable. The only way you can compare, is to compare between Android versus Android and iPhone versus iPhone, because yeah, different APIs. And if you're talking about very expensive phones, well, they also released the mid-range smartphone charts for this month, and the top is the iQOO Z5, which is powered by the Snapdragon 778G, which I do think is one of the more interesting mid-range chipsets right now. But interestingly enough, it is actually faster than the Snapdragon 780G, despite it supposedly having a slightly weaker GPU. So they don't actually have a breakdown of the performance numbers because Antutu is separated into like 4 categories. But yeah, so the Snapdragon 778G devices actually take up 2 of the top positions, while the third one is the Xiaomi 11 Lite. Yes, it's actually the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G that's not available in Malaysia because the Malaysia Xiaomi 11 5G and E is based on the 778G. So maybe that's actually faster, I don't exactly know. But yeah, you can see that the following phones are also all the Snapdragon 778G, and actually the Snapdragon 778G dominates pretty much the entire chart, except for 3 devices, one with the Snapdragon 780G, and the Oppo Reno 6 5G with the Dimensity 900, and the Redmi Note 11 Pro Plus with the Dimensity 920. So interestingly enough, the Dimensity 900 outperforms the Dimensity 920. Just in, I think, a similar case to the Snapdragon 780G outperforming the Snapdragon 778G. So if you did see, a recent article about, Honor's CEO claiming that the Snapdragon 778G can deliver a better experience than flagships with the Snapdragon 888, it is actually plausible. User experience is entirely different from benchmark scores, obviously. And, it's a well-tuned device, with proper thermal profiles, and curves and whatnot, you can actually get a very good experience out of mid-range chipsets today, because yeah, mid-range chipsets are generally about as powerful as a flagship chipset from maybe a year or 2 ago. So yeah, they're actually very powerful, and most of the time you won't really need that much performance out of your smartphone, because yeah, whatever that the mid-range chipsets offer usually is enough to satisfy most people's needs. But yeah, what do you guys think? Do you guys actually still go for flagships, or you guys still prefer, to go for the mid-range, where I do believe that's where the most value is had? For S Pro and atas tu mesti Black Shark. Yeah, Chinese, the Black Shark, they actually reserve some of the top of the line flagships for the Chinese market, which is kind of irksome, I guess, to people who actually want to buy them. But I don't know, maybe they look down upon Malaysians and our ability to buy expensive smartphones. I don't really know. Anyway, the next news is from MSI. So MSI just only announced their AMD Advantage Edition gaming laptops here in Malaysia, and there are 3 of them: the MSI Alpha 15, Bravo 15, and the Delta 15. So what's the most interesting thing about this trio is actually, I think, the fact that, the Bravo is the most affordable one instead of, the Alpha or the Delta, because, I would probably assume A or D would be the most affordable one depending on how you want to look at it. Obviously, yeah, some people say Alpha is, the Alpha top dog. So the Alpha is probably the best one. And Delta, well, Delta also has a chance of being the top one because, it's D. So A, B, C, D, D is the best. Obviously not on your report card, but yeah. So anyway, the 3 laptops that have been announced is the Alpha 15, Bravo 15, and Delta 15. So we start with the MSI Bravo 15, which starts from a pretty affordable RM 3949. So this is probably the base AMD laptop that they have, full AMD. And I think the MSI Bravo series actually started the whole full AMD thing for MSI. and this is actually quite nice. The problem is that it's not actually an AMD Advantage laptop because it features a RX 5500M instead of the RX 6000 Series M graphics cards, which do have the AMD Advantage label slapped onto them because apparently AMD works with OEMs to get the most out of the AMD Ryzen 5000 and Radeon 6000 graphics laptops. So this is not exactly the AMD Advantage, but you can consider the AMD Advantage because it is fully AMD powered, but it's not officially AMD Advantage. So there's that distinction there. So you get two options, the AMD Ryzen 5 5600H or the Ryzen 7 5800H, depending on how many cores you need for your CPU. And also the difference is in the RAM as well as the display. So oddly enough, MSI decided that the higher performance processor gets a 60Hz display, while the 6-core Ryzen 5 5600H gets a 1440Hz display. So I don't exactly 1440, sorry, 144Hz display. So quite an interesting decision there. Usually we do see these kind of things happening even with Asus's last gen Zephyrus G14, where the previous generation they actually had a 2K60 display because the 2K60 is a sharper display, and obviously I don't think many gamers will be gaming on 2K, so they decided to make it the highest spec one, and then the lower spec one they actually give it a 120Hz Full HD display. So regardless, that issue is no longer a problem with the G14 because they actually gave you 120Hz display regardless whether you go with the 2K display, or I think it's a 144Hz with the Full HD display. I don't really remember the lower spec, but so that's a very interesting decision they have there. But the difference in pricing, it's also quite small, I think, like about 450 ringgit. So you pay 450 ringgit, you get extra RAM and 2 more cores. So decent deal, I guess. And then as we step up, the MSI Alpha 15, this is the actual AMD Advantage Edition laptop, and it starts from 5299. Oh no, actually there's only one model, so it is priced at 5299. So this laptop actually has the most AMD technology in it. It not only has AMD Smart Access Memory, AMD Smart Shift, so all of that combines to give this the AMD Advantage. It also has AMD FreeSync, so you get a 144Hz FreeSync display, which gives you fluid gameplay in games, and you don't get tearing and whatnot when you're playing games at below the maximum refresh rate. Below the maximum refresh rate and lower than 144 FPS. So it's a smoother gaming experience, and I would say that it also looks pretty good. The MSI Alpha Bravo and Delta series is probably differentiated from their other G series gaming laptops with their logo. So you can see that it has a Phoenix logo instead of the Dragon. So as you might know, MSI Dragon is pretty synonymous with their gaming lineup, but for the Alpha Bravo Delta they actually go with this Phoenix to differentiate it from their Intel powered gaming laptops. So this has the Ryzen 5 5600H and the Radeon RX 6600M. So combined, I think it should provide you with decent enough FHD gameplay, and it costs you 5299. So obviously it's not the most portable laptop. I do wish that AMD made more portable gaming laptops based on fully AMD specs, but maybe soon, because they do have an exceptionally beautiful GS series, so hopefully that will trickle down to the MSI AMD gaming laptops designs. So the last but not least is the Delta 15, which is actually the flagship of the series. So this has the Ryzen 5800H or the Ryzen 9 5900HX, and you get the Radeon RX 60. The numbers are confusing me. The RX 6700M graphics. So this actually has the most VRAM I have seen in a laptop because it has 10 gigs compared to most laptop graphic cards topping out 8 gigs, but this one has 10 gigs. So that's a pretty nice distinction. And you also get Intel Wi-Fi, which is also very interesting because the other two actually have AMD Wi-Fi, which they worked with MediaTek 4. So this actually comes with Intel Wi-Fi 6E, and you get a 240Hz display, which unfortunately does not feature FreeSync. So it is a fixed refresh rate, 240Hz. But I guess it's probably fine because I think most people who get this would probably be considering either playing those esports games which take advantage of the high refresh rate, or take advantage of the display with things that are not affected by FPS, you know, like video editing and whatnot, to take advantage of the higher performance processor, because yeah, you do have a Ryzen 9 5900 headshacks here. And this is actually the lightest. It's 1.9 kilos despite being the most powerful. So yeah, I guess this is as close as it gets, but you can see that the design is still not as sleek. It's like a last gen GS instead of the this gen GS. So yeah, definitely still some room to grow there. My dream lappy is the MSI GS series. Yeah, I know, right? The MSI GS series is probably the best looking MSI laptops ever. The GS, just time Super Daddy used to have one. It's so nice, so thin, and you know, the keyboard actually feels really good. So compared to, you know, your normal gaming laptop, you know, this one feels extremely good with its excellent tactile feedback, which you don't really get with laptops, because you know, they are made of user switches, so it's like you push them, they're mushy. At best, you know, you get a non-mushy experience whereby you push it down, it goes really smoothly, and that's probably the best you can expect. But that one actually has a tactile feedback. I go with my budget always. Yeah, that's probably the best way to shop for gadgets, I guess, you know, depending on what you need and what you can afford. And the last bit of news today is the Settle introducing the e-wallet sharing solution with Settle Share. So this, in essence, lets you provide for your whole family with petrol. So yeah, your whole family can use the same Settle account to pay for their petrol, and you can also collect Mesra points into the same account, you know, so that gives you a lot more convenience. You know, let's say you want to cover your family's petrol expenditure, or I don't know, maybe if someone wants to use it for the company, a small company, I think that works as well. And obviously, you know, to promote this, from now until 31st December, they actually give you badges for you to unlock even more rewards and bonus credits up to 50,000 with referrals. So yeah, depending on how rajin you are to share with your friends, this can probably earn you a little bit of money. So yeah, quite an interesting change. I haven't actually used Settle before because I think they added it to Shell and Petronas first, and I don't use either of those petrols. I prefer using Petron for some reason, because I don't know, using Shell seems to make my petrol tank go down faster. I know it's probably a myth, but yeah, that's what I experienced. So and Petronas was a bit more rough when I drove, so yeah, I didn't really like Petronas. But yeah, I ate Super Daddy, I saw the nice toys. Well, perks of the job, I would say. Perks of the job. I mean, I have a lot of toys, I don't think you hit me, right? Please give me prizes. I do give you prizes, man. Right, so I think that's it for the news. Let's move on to the motherboard. Let me transition. Ta-da! So yeah, there's a camera up top. Look. So yeah, this is the Mac Z690 Tomahawk Wi-Fi, which is considered like a mid-range motherboard, I guess, for MSI. And while the official pricing isn't known, it's supposed to be below 1.5. So yeah, for something that has PCIe 5, DDR5, below 1.5 is a pretty reasonable price, I would say. I don't know about you guys, but that's what I think. Anyway, I think I should adjust the white balance a little bit. It's upside down. Is it? Oh yeah. My bad. I hope this is better. So yeah, this is actually more realistic color. So yeah, this is the Mac Z690 Tomahawk Wi-Fi. And we also have some features on the back. Oddly enough, they decided not to list the features on the front. And all they actually listed was just, you know, TPM support and Windows 11 support. And the fact that, of course, it supports the Intel 12th gen processors, you know, and it features the chipset, the Z690 chipset. So yeah, not a lot of features on the front. And on the back, so actually the camera is tilted, so that's why it's like you're not seeing the straight angle. So yeah, it does mention, you know, the power, the M.2, which actually has 20 gig USB, which is very nice, USB 3.2 Gen 2 X2, and Wi-Fi 6E, which is also the latest Wi-Fi you can get in the market right now. Wi-Fi 7 is supposed to be announced next year, but yeah, obviously it's not out yet. Audio boost, which is, yeah, basically what MSI calls their audio enhancement technologies, you know, basically, I think all their motherboards have audio boost anyway. And DDR5, which is probably the biggest highlight of this board because there is a Mac Z690 Tomahawk Wi-Fi, Mac Z690 Tomahawk DDR4. So this one is the DDR5 version. And of course, Gen 5, PCIe Gen 5, which is connected to the CPU and you only get it on the first graphics card slot. And server grade PCB, which doesn't really mean a lot. It's basically a 6-layer PCB, I just checked. And it has 2.5 gig LAN, which decent enough, and it's Intel 2.5 gig LAN, so that's good. And the fact that it has M.2 shield frozer means that it has M.2 heatsinks, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for liking, John Wong. So yeah, the box contents are pretty basic, I guess. If you want to go check it out in more detail, you can go check it out on PokdeLIVE.net. It's already available. These are the Wi-Fi antennas. Kind of odd that they didn't give you the usual, you know, the Wi-Fi, you know, that Gundam horn Wi-Fi antenna. So here you get this kind of standard ones. But I'm not complaining. I do use them once in a while because some builds actually look better, especially if the ITX. I think it looks very cute with two antennas sticking out the back rather than a horn. But yeah, this is not ITX build. And this is the board itself in anti-static back. Take a look at that later. And then underneath here we have all the rest of the contents. So the great thing with the modern motherboards is that, you know, you have a USB drive instead of focus. So a USB drive instead of a driver CD because nobody uses driver CDs anymore today. And they also give you an easy M.2 clip, which is also very nice. So we'll get into that in a bit. As well as the usual documentation, not going to go too much into that. And two SATA cables, which focus. Two SATA cables, which are 2 out of 6. So the motherboard has 6 SATA slots, they give you 2. I think it's fine. Nobody really uses all the SATA slots anyway. And now, the first thing that I want to show you guys is the easy M.2 clip. Taking care not to be upside down. Let me just reduce the brightness a bit. Yeah, I think that's good. This one doesn't have it. So if you read my overview, you might have noticed that, you know, there is a slight issue that I have with the M.2 is that the M.2 first screw is actually threaded, so it looks kind of odd because you can actually unscrew it. I wish that it was captive, but yeah. They actually went with a captive screw for the back, but not the front, so I don't actually know why that is the case. But yeah, it looks good. Yeah, not a bad looking board because I think this is probably the best looking MSI, what do you call it? Tomahawk Mac series, I would say, because most of the Mac series they usually go with the more military inspired design. This one actually looks very clean, and I think it reminds me of, you know, the MSI Unify series, which you know, have no RGB, plain black motherboards, very sleek, high performance. So yeah, this really reminds me of that, and I think that they're actually going for that aesthetic because this board doesn't have any RGB. So there is an RGB switch here, which lets you turn on and off the RGB, but basically that is only to control the ARGB and RGB headers on the motherboard, because there is no built-in RGB on this board. It's entirely black, and when you build it into a PC, it will be dark unless you add lighting. So pretty good if, you know, you want to build a relatively more affordable Z690 based PC, 12th gen PC without RGB, because yeah, there are people who hate RGB that much. I don't know why. So yeah, the M.2 clip is this, the easy M.2 clip, which I think is probably one of the better innovations in the market right now. So yeah, this is it. So what you see is actually a clip whereby if you have installed any M.2 drives, you would probably know that, you know, you have to deal with the tiny fiddly M.2 screws, which are not exactly friendly when it comes to installing. I think most of us have probably lost a few, so this helps you avoid that. So in the motherboard box, there are actually 2 more, but they are not as important as the ones that are installed, because the two are actually for the SSDs that are not 2280. So for the 2280 slots like this, you know, for this slot and this slot, when the rear mounting point of the heatsink is where the SSD will rest on, so there's no need for an extra mounting point. But if you use shorter ones, then yes. But I don't think there are that many consumer SSDs that are shorter than 2280, so it's kind of nice that MSI actually thought about that and still decided to give you extra. So kudos to MSI for that. So how it works is that you install in the SSD. I can't actually see like this. Yeah, I can't balance. Yep. So this is what it looks like when it's mounted. So basically it's like a clip that lets you mount your SSDs, you know, without having to deal with screws, which I do really appreciate. So obviously, yeah, when you want to screw on the heatsink, you still need to use a screwdriver, but yeah, now installing SSDs is a toolless process, which is great, I guess. Definitely a very nice innovation, and I think a great alternative to, you know, the Asus motherboards, which do have the Q latch thing. Is it Q latch? Q clip? Yeah, they have something similar whereby they use that sliding, this type of clip mechanism as well, so you don't have to deal with the fiddly M.2 screws. Because I think everyone knows that, you know, the M.2 screws are very difficult to deal with because they're so small. So on the back side of the motherboard, you can see that it's slightly different from most motherboards because there are no through hole pins here, because this is DDR5, and I think, as far as I know, all the DDR5 motherboards I've seen, they use SMT DIMM slots, so they are only mounted on the top side of the PCB, so the back is not mounted. I mean, they don't go through the motherboard like usual. Suppose this should give you better signal integrity, and you can also see that on the PCIe 5 slot here, which also doesn't have, you know, through holes, but you know, obviously the PCIe 3 slots here are through hole. So this motherboard doesn't have any other PCIe 4 slots other than the M.2 drives, because I think it's a logical way of going about it, because, you know, I think there are not that many PCIe 4 accessories other than graphics cards, and this is not actually meant for you to use multiple graphics cards, so they decided to give you as many PCIe 4 SSD slots as they can. So there are 3 PCIe 4 slots, which uses up the entire 12 lanes that the Z690 chipset gives you, along with the one that is available from the CPU. So 1, 2, 3 PCIe 4. One of these is PCIe 3. I think this one is PCIe 3. So yeah, pretty much the full usage, and pretty much I don't think there is anything to complain about this motherboard. The aesthetics look good. The VRM is pretty solid. There's 16 power stages. 16 power stages, and you can see that all of them are 70 amps one. Tomahawk. Yes, tow your hawk. And actually in the box there's stickers also to customize your motherboard if you want. So give me a minute. Oh wait, I put it somewhere else. So yeah, these are the stickers, and you know, you can probably see that they are shaped to, you know, stick on these areas, just in case you don't really like the black aesthetic, which I, to be honest, I would understand why would anyone not like this. But yeah, and I would say that this is a pretty decent Z690 motherboard if you are not into, you know, the overclocking scene that much. Say you just want to, you know, be able to overclock, but you're not planning to go for extreme overclocks. So this doesn't come with stuff like, you know, postcode readout and stuff, you know, which would be helpful when you actually go to overclocking. But yeah, other than that, I think it's pretty much well featured. I mean, obviously it has MSI's BIOS, everything works fine, and the VRMs look pretty beefy. It's not the most beefy, but there are 16 power stages with 70 amps each of power handling capacity, so I think that's plenty of power for you to push your 12th gen processor. So yeah, I think this is a pretty decent budget board, but unfortunately it's not available in Malaysia yet, so you can't build with this board just yet. But yeah, do stay tuned if you are interested into building with this motherboard, because yeah, to be entirely honest, I think this is one of the most well thought out motherboards out there with this, you know, PCIe layout, as well as, you know, the overall design of it, and also the fact that the I/O actually has USB 3.2 Gen 2 X2, because yeah, while you might think that Thunderbolt 4 gives you USB 3.2 Gen 2 X2 support, it doesn't. So yeah, this is nice. Tarak Q code kah? Tarak. The only thing it has is the easy debug LEDs, which are located here, because yeah, I mean that's pretty much standard. And yeah, that's about it. And there's actually a pretty interesting update BIOS. I think most motherboards today actually have this, the way they can update your BIOS from the back, from a USB stick without having to, you know, get into the BIOS, because you can't get into the BIOS with an unsupported CPU. But yeah, this lets you update the BIOS without a CPU, so without supported CPU. I don't think you can update the BIOS without the CPU. Can you? I don't know. But yeah, features wise, I don't think there's anything to complain about. The only thing is, like I mentioned, the overclocking features. And yeah, I think that's about it. If you guys want to find out more about this motherboard, you can go check out our overview on PokdeLIVE.net. And I think I will see you guys next week. Bye. Why is it not focusing?